The Sunset Limited by Cormac McCarthy. So I've read all of Cormac McCarthy's novels and I've ranked them. You can check that out if you would like. But McCarthy's total body of work was not comprised exclusively of novels, and there were a few works of his which I had not read, the most prominent of which I think being probably this one, The Sunset Limited. Now, The Sunset Limited is a play, or as it is subtitled, a novel in dramatic form, which I think is probably more fitting because as a work of theater, this is somewhat unconventional. But despite this little book, and it is a little book, it's a pretty brief read. You can read it in probably just like a couple hours or so. But despite this little book not perhaps having the renown of, say, Blood Meridian, I think it is still nonetheless a pretty great work in its own right, and one that succeeds on both an intellectual and an emotional level. So, what is The Sunset Limited about? Well, it is a one-act play that takes place entirely in one location and features only two characters. These characters are only ever denoted by their racial identities, i.e., black and white. And black is a reformed ex-con, now evangelical Christian, whereas white is a pretty die-hard atheist professor who is also suicidally depressed. Now, just before the opening of the play, White had attempted suicide by hurling himself in front of the titular Sunset Limited, which is a train, if you didn't know. And he was rescued by Black, and now as the work opens, they have come to Black's apartment where they are engaging in a running discussion about God and faith and belief and disbelief and life and death and lots of aspects of the human condition. And that's pretty much the plot of this. As I said, this is pretty unconventional as a work of theater because usually theater is driven by plot. I mean, same thing with movies, right? You don't pay to go watch something that doesn't have any kind of forward direction to it that's kind of just, two people talking, basically. Well, I mean, there is like My Dinner with Andre, so I guess there are exceptions to the rule, but this is definitely kind of, it is unconventional, I think, as theater, just as McCarthy's screenplay, the unpublished screenplay, Whales and Men, was highly unconventional as a screenplay, and it's kind of no wonder that never got made. But this is nonetheless still a pretty engaging work, and it really wrestles with a lot of big ideas as per the usual with Cormac McCarthy's books. But what I really think that The Sunset Limited is about is kind of an argument between Cormac McCarthy and Cormac McCarthy. Like, these two characters really feel kind of like different facets of his own personality. Black is kind of the simple country boy who can find solace in scripture, whereas White is the much more educated but also deeply unhappy and fatalistic type who sees no hope in anything and thinks that life is just a dismal mistake. And throughout the work, they kind of spar with each other as Black tries to convert White and tries to make him see the light and convince him not to kill himself. And the ending to this is really pretty powerful, actually. I guess I'll just, spoiler alert, I guess I'll spoil it. But at the end, after a lengthy discussion, White finally just kind of shuts Black down, and he's like, I'm just not like you. I don't see any kind of silver lining. I don't see any reason to believe in anything. I just want to die and no longer exist. So he's like, peace out. That's what I'm going to go do, presumably. It ends with White leaving, again, presumably to go complete his suicide mission, whereas Black feels that he's failed to save this other person's life and is kind of talking to God about why he didn't give him the right words to persuade him. Um, and it really is pretty powerful, and it builds over the course of the work. And like I said, this succeeds on both an intellectual and an emotional level, and that's more than I can say for some of, actually a lot of Cormac McCarthy's other works, because like Blood Meridian, there's no emotion in that at all. I mean, it's something you read solely for the beauty of the language, but also the kind of themes and ideas, but like there is no emotional connection at all in that. Same with Suttree, for me at least. I know I'll draw some ire from the fanboys of Suttree. They're like, that's such a great book. I didn't think it was. I thought it was very emotionally flat. The characters, I didn't connect with any of them. Same thing with Child of God. A lot of Cormac McCarthy's books just don't have that kind of character connection that you would like. They're much more kind of cerebral, I think. But the Sunset Limited is definitely not. There is real connection to these characters, both of them. Black, you really get inside his head as he explains his backstory to White, how he was kind of a ne'er do well who eventually wound up in prison, had some pretty gruesome stories to tell from that time, but then he eventually, due to a near death experience, he eventually turned himself around and converted and is now kind of the proselytizing Christian amateur minister that he is now. And White is this, again, kind of very highly educated character who is deeply unhappy. And as he kind of questions himself throughout the work, does more knowledge lead to more and more unhappiness? And there's kind of some dialogue in here about like Genesis, because Black is like, the answers are in here, the Bible. And White's like, the Adam and Eve story, that an increase in knowledge equals a decrease in contentment. And so there's a lot of kind of food for thought in this. There definitely is, but it's also, like I said, deeply personable and emotional. And the ending I really did find quite powerful, truly. Now, as to the criticisms of this work, I will say this: my only real criticism about this, other than the fact that maybe it really is just like a novel written in dramatic form. It's just Cormac McCarthy doing what Cormac McCarthy did in a slightly different format. So, as a work of theater, the this maybe isn't the most like well designed thing for selling tickets, maybe because it's just two people talking and there's no plot to it. But that aside, the only real criticism that I have of it is that honestly he could have done more with it. It's a very simple idea, but there were some more avenues I think that he could have taken with it, some more directions he could have gone, and some more things that he could have commented on and argued with or about. So my only real complaint with this is that I think he could have packed more into it. Um, but what I really do like about this book so much is that it is truly unbiased in its portrayal of these two characters and their disparate viewpoints. Um, to the point where I really can't say exactly which side McCarthy himself probably fell on more so. Like I said, it's kind of, I think, like an argument with himself. These two characters are just different aspects of his own psyche, I guess, I would think. But you don't really know which one he more strongly identifies with. Black really carries the work. In fact, it's a little bit lopsided, I think, because for the most part, White doesn't really say quite as much as Black does until the end, in which he kind of just unloads on him and it expresses his views in full. Very, very bleak and pessimistic views. But Black really carries the work, and he's the one that you definitely root for, even if you don't share his ideological outlook. I think those who read this book will probably really root for him the most because he's just a really good, genuinely good guy who's trying to do what he believes is the right thing and stand up for his convictions and try to save another soul. And White, you definitely know where he's coming from because, I mean, you can turn on the news and just see, what a terrible place our world often is. So you do understand both of them, but like I say, I didn't really know which one exactly McCarthy probably endorsed more so. And I think that's a real testament to the quality of this, that you could write this um, and not, you know, not have the reader come away knowing exactly where you actually stand with it. Pretty great work. So yeah, to rate the Sunset Limited, I'm going to give the Sunset Limited an A. It is a great little work. My only complaint again is that I think there could have been more to it. There were some other things they could have commented upon the characters in this, I would say, but what it does well, and it's not perhaps one of McCarthy's grandest works, but I will say I think it may be one of his most perfect, if that makes sense. Like, I still think that The Passenger is his grandest work. Like, that's the one where he truly went for broke in terms of just throwing in all the stuff he wanted to talk about and comment upon. But it's not really perfect because it's often kind of clunky and oddly put together at times in terms of its structure. Uh, but this book is kind of the opposite of that. It's not the most ambitious thing he's ever written, but it is a very simple idea done very, very well. And its execution is, I think, pretty much flawless. So yeah, I will give the Sunset Limited an A. Now, how would I rank this? Because like I said, I've ranked all of Cormac McCarthy's novels, and you might could count this because it calls itself a novel in dramatic form. So maybe I should have read this before doing that ranking video. But how would I rank this in terms of the rest of his body of work? I think I would put it, if I'm remembering correctly, um, I think I would put it right somewhere in there where I put Stella Maris and The Road, anywhere from like the seventh to the fifth spot in there. On the upper end of things, I would say it is definitely on the upper end of his body of work. So yeah, somewhere from the seventh to the fifth place, somewhere in there, I would probably rank this. It's very short, like I said, but it really packs a punch, and it's very poignant. I will say that it's one of the most poignant things he's ever written, because he really treats the subjects and the subject matter of this book with a great deal of respect, more so than I think a lot of other authors would probably do. Like Black's outlook nowadays is largely, I think, kind of maligned or scorned a little bit, but McCarthy really shows that kind of perspective, real respect in this, and that's of course because he was raised Catholic, and then eventually, I don't know what exactly the true nature of his beliefs were, but he was definitely in tune with the mindset of the faithful, and the way that he handles the character of Black in this feels very, very authentic, but it's very, very again, respectful, with some very good arguments on his side. In fact, better arguments, I think, than on White's side. And this is like one of the rare examples of where you'll see like apologetics that actually kind of trumps the atheistic side, at least in the confines of the work, anyhow. But yeah, so Sunset Limited, I'm giving it an A. I think it's a great work. So have you read the Sunset Limited? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with anything I've said about it here today. Have you have you seen the HBO adaptation of it made with Tommy Lee Jones and Samuel L. Jackson? I myself have not. I don't have HBO. But if you have, let me know about that, what you thought about it as well. And if you haven't read The Sunset Limited, hell yeah, I could recommend this. I think it's a great work, and again, it won't take you very long to read it all, but it'll give you stuff to chew on, definitely, I think, and it'll also kind of pluck at the heartstrings, perhaps. So yeah, good work. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.